And next we're going to hear from Dr. Pat Flanagan, who's speaking on her own behalf and on behalf of the American Academy of Pediatrics. Dr. Flanagan is not only an amazing clinician and teacher, but has been at the forefront of policy and practice changes to improve the lives of low-income children for over 30 years. She's taken time from her clinic today to be with us and needs to leave the virtual world for the real world right after her remarks. So thanks for being here, Dr. Flanagan.
Thanks, Linda and Rachel, for putting this together. Thank you so much to Senator Murray and to Representative Handy for this legislation, and really thanks to the coalition and fellow advocates. You know, I am a professor of pediatrics at Brown, and I am a senior vice chair of pediatrics at Hasbro. But I speak today as part of the board of directors of the American Academy of Pediatrics and part of the executive committee at Rhode Island chapter of the American Academy. I also speak as a private citizen and as someone who really cares deeply about children and families with young children in this state of ours. I speak as a pediatrician who has worked in South Providence for the last 35 years. I work with many families who live in extreme poverty in this really abundant state. And I have the privilege of caring for families, many of whom struggle to keep their children housed, adequately fed, and clothed. I've watched a generation of children grow up in extreme poverty. The health impacts of poverty on children, as Senator Murray mentioned, are well documented. And the impact of childhood poverty on the adult health of those children is also very clear. Our youngest children are the most likely age demographic to live in poverty. This is true nationally, and it's true here in Rhode Island. Our children enter families when they're just starting out, when parents may lack employment or education or experience. And this is a particularly cruel fact, given the fact that the health impacts of poverty are greatest and most profound on our youngest citizens. Child poverty has a profound effect on specific circumstances, things like birth weight, infant mortality, language development, environmental exposures like lead and nutrition, including obesity and due to the reliance on low-quality, high-energy, dense foods. Poor children are more likely to suffer from chronic illnesses. They're more likely to suffer injury due to unsafe housing and neighborhood conditions. Poor children are at increased risk for difficulties with self-regulation, executive functions such as inattention and impulsivity, poor peer relationships. Poverty can make parenting difficult, especially in the context of concerns about inadequate food, transportation, heat, and housing. Exposure to the stresses of food insecurity, housing instability, and grinding poverty as a child have direct, lasting effects on lifelong health. Such toxic exposures are related not only to higher rates of depression in adulthood, but also to higher rates of many, many types of disease, heart disease, hypertension, many forms of cancer, and clearly with early death. The provision of this proposed legislation will begin to address some of the need, raising the cash benefit, which again, as Senator Murray mentioned, hasn't been raised in 30 years, from 30% to 50% of federal poverty to start, allowing the $100 a year clothing allowance to be paid for all children, including those under 4, helping families who rely on Rhode Island Works will be, again, move in the right direction. The ability to count those 2 years at CCRI as meeting the work requirement is a longer-term strategy that can help lift family earning and change the trajectory of families. And the continuation of benefits for 6 months after a parent obtains a minimum wage job for a transition period to allow supports for transition instead of having families fall off a financial cliff as soon as a job is found makes common sense if we really want these economically fragile families to succeed. So for the health of Rhode Island's children and the health of Rhode Island, this is such really critical legislation, and I am very grateful again for its being heard and passing this year.
From your mouth to the policymakers' ears.
Trying.